this. Something I do in class all the time. And it's real simple, sort of, involves this idea of teaching correlation versus causation. It's something that comes up in a ton of classes. And anytime you can go through and you can explain what sort of correlation is, and when this goes up, or this goes down, and work through it all. And this is just a really easy way to sort of visually plot spurious relationships. It's got a whole list of, this general category, interesting variables, interesting causes of death, all these other things. You click on them, you get a list of variables to pick. I usually go with this first one, which is number of Nicolas Cage films. But you've got, a ton of them. Per capita consumption of sour cream, non-commercial space launches. So when you pick a variable you like, then it gives you all of the correlations from highest positive correlation, number of female editors in the Harvard Law Review, all the way down to the largest negative correlation. So usually, you pick out a random one, and then you chart it, and it gives you sort of a really nice visualization of the correlation between the two. And then, I use it to demonstrate how easy it is to sort of post hoc tell causal stories, because obviously Nicolas Cage is saving lives because people are staying home and watching his movies rather than taking, helicopter flights of questionable safety. And I basically use it, the students like to see it, and then I say, go home, plot 3 sort of relationships, and then make a causal story and explain why. And it sort of gets them in this post hoc sort of rationalization about how easy it is to use data improperly and make up causal things. So it's a real quick sort of, easy visualization that gets the point across, I think, a lot more than sort of not, instead of explaining how correlations actually work, but showing them with some fun data. So that's something I do all the time. And let me show you one other example from my class. So one of the other classes that I teach is a political science pedagogy course. I run one of the TAs basically in the Department of SPA. So we talk about sort of teaching, pedagogy, teaching styles, and things like that. So one of the things that we go through is they do a teaching style skills inventory to find sort of where they fall. But basically, it produces a lot of data for each student where they fall on different spectrums. And so in Google Drive, I just created a Google Sheet, which, I don't know how much you use Google Drive, but it's, the functionality is exactly the same as Excel, right? It's just it created on a shared space. So I create a little sheet, a row for each student anonymously, a category, a column for each score they're going to have, and then real simple formulas to sum it and to load all of that information as they put it into a series of graphs. So we take this sort of inventory, they come up with data that they're producing, and then I share a link on Blackboard to this Google Drive, and I say, once you're done with it, go on and fill in all of your scores. And as they fill in, these graphs auto-populate. So it allows them to sort of see there's a sample row at the bottom. It updates in real time as they sort of fill things in. So it's an easier way to sort of see class distributions, see that, there is actually variation on these things. I use it anytime I actually have an exercise that produces data for the students so that they can go and see individual scores, aggregate scores. I'm a big fan of using Google Drive sort of collaboratively. The other thing I do with it is on Blackboard, I have a folder that is a Google Doc for each class, right? It's an open link to just a plain blank Google Doc for each class. And if you have the link, you can edit it. So what I do is when I go into class, I put up the blank document up on the projector, and I use it as the whiteboard. It's sort of a way to democratize the whiteboard. So instead of me writing things on all the time, when somebody has a good point, we can say, okay, put it up on the board. And the entire class sort of collaborates on what goes on the board that time. And at the end of the day, it leaves the class with a collaborative section of notes in that class period that they can go back to. At the end of class, I go home that night, I read it over, make sure there's no sort of content errors or things I think can be misconstrued, and then I lock it. And then at the end of the semester, they've got week by week sort of snapshots of what otherwise would be on the blackboard that they've collaboratively worked and built together. So it allows me to not have to be my back to the students, working on the blackboard the whole time. It allows them some ownership over it. And it allows sort of, I say, that's a great point, put it up there. And then we look at it and we say, well, is that really what you meant? And then they can sort of collaboratively edit until it gets to be the most precise statement of what they wanted. So another sort of collaborative thing I do. All right, to get out of these and to get into some more of the actual content things here, I basically divide these visualizations into 3 things, talking about raw data visualization, talking about concept visualization, flowcharts, organizational charts, and then infographics to package everything together and how you can use those in your classes. So to run through the basically somewhat in order, Gapminder, the first one. If you've ever seen the TED Talks by Hans Rosling, you might be familiar once you see it playing, but basically this is his program, and what it does is it makes one type of graph really, really well. It makes these sort of time series bubble charts. This is his famous one that's got life expectancy on the Y and income per person over 200 years, and it tells this story. So basically you can hit play and allow sort of this relationship to develop over time. We can fast forward so there's a little more movement to get into the 1900s. And so it makes this sort of one type of graph, and this is really customizable. You can stop it and start it at any point. You can go in and pick out specific countries by clicking on them, or going and finding them in this list. And then when you play it again, you start to get the relationship with actual tails, so you can track it over time. You can go and look at sort of the colors represent geographic regions, so you can highlight specific regions. And again, all this is customizable. So right now, let's deselect these to make it a little easier. We've got geographic regions, but you can switch to any other, it's got a whole series. There's a ton of data loaded into this. There's an active movement to load in all publicly available UN and World Bank data. So you've got it at your disposal, so you can change colors to main religious affiliation within the country. The size of the dots is your population, but again, this can be changed to any number of indicators. Hi, data visualization?
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Do you want to get signed on to any computer if you like, or if you've got your own, you can use that. Let me just check online and see if anyone showed up. So this is all really customizable. And the other nice thing about this is, the X and Y are customizable as well. But for any of them, you've got this little sort of hash marked, looks like a table if you can see it up close. But if you click on that, it actually pulls up the raw data that's coming from there. And all of this, it might look familiar, is just living in a Google Doc somewhere out there. Just for your reference, if you want to go to tinyurl.com/VISSFI, that'll take you to a Google Doc with links to all the tools we're talking about. Yeah, so you've got the raw data here. All of this is downloadable. All of this can be, pulled offline and played with. So it's an easy way if you're asking your students to go and show relationships. you can actually have them look at the data, look at what's missing, look at what sort of coding assumptions are made. This about page tells you about where the data is coming from. It's pretty good, tracked back. And then you've got the ability to download any of the raw data, usually as Excel or OpenOffice are the two main ones that it's got. It's got some other functionality, but for the most part, that's what it is. It makes this kind of graph. I should say the one sort of limitation of this is that you'll notice I didn't log into anything here. It just lives on the internet. There is no actual accounts. So if you go through and you make a visualization that you like, the way to do it is to go to share graph and you'll get a link to it. And so usually I've got, a Google Doc of 4 or 5 different links to graphs that I use. There's no actual go in and create an account and have them saved there. There's also, this is all web-based, there's the ability to download this program basically offline. And in case if you want to do that, then you can incorporate your own data. There's a way to load data into this to use online, but then it becomes publicly available. So if there's some sort of proprietary data or just something you haven't published yet that you want to be using in your classes, the way to do that would be to download the program offline and run it through there. Or, if you don't have sort of a reliable wireless connection where you're teaching. So this is Gapminder. That's the main basic functionality of it. It also has this mapping function, which is it's sort of pointless in my opinion. The kind of data that's in here doesn't really lend itself to this description. This is, the sort of time series bubble chart is the real key here. Okay, so that's great if you want to make this one type of graph. There's a ton of data living in this. Well, apparently now there's an error message, but trust me, there's a ton of data living in this. The second tool here, Noma, is a little more versatile. It's got a much larger amount of data, but what it makes up for in sort of versatility, it sacrifices in ease of use. The startup costs of sort of learning and finding what you need in Noma is a little more difficult, and I'll show you what that looks like. So this is Noma, and the first thing you'll notice is, I've got an account that I've signed into here. There's free accounts you can go and create. There's professional accounts that cost money, but they're more sort of based around business analytics. For education purposes, I don't really see a reason to require a paid account on this. So World Data Atlas, their big selling point is their size. They tout they've got over 490 million time series variables loaded into this. More than 1,000 different topics coming from almost 1,000 sources. A good idea to get the scope of the size is to look at this data coverage matrix. This is going to take you literally by every country they've got data on and a range of topics. And so you can see, if you're interested in studying education policy in Austria, they've got 385 different indicator variables you can look at that on. So you get an idea where you've got a lot of variables. But if you're looking at Antigua and Barbuda and looking at national defense, for some reason, there's 0 variables on there. Can't imagine with a topic as big as national defense in the island nations, it's, we don't have more coverage. But this gives you an idea that, there's a lot of stuff here, particularly, just because of the ease of availability if you're looking at sort of EU countries. So let's say, we want to look at Austria and we want to look at, tourism in Austria. We've got 94 variables here. So when you click on that, it's going to take you in through basically an alphabetical list of every tourism variable available in this. So let's say we want to look at, something, arrivals at tourist accommodation establishments. It's going to tell you where so this is Eurostat data. uploaded this data set from March 2014. It's going to give you extensive sort of background information on where this is coming from, and then you're able to just select the data set. So the way NOMA works is it's going to take you through building a visualization, and basically it's going to present to you decisions that you need to make on the left hand. And as you make these decisions, it's going to populate the visualization up on the right. Let me just check one more time to make sure no one's on the webcast. Okay. So as you make these decisions, let's say we want to look at our indicator variable as just total arrivals at tourist establishments. You go to the next decision. You can choose sort of another, do we want to look at hotels and similar accommodations, hotels as defined by holiday and other short stay accommodations, campgrounds, recreational vehicles, parks, trailers. Let's just look at hotels. We go to the next decision, percent change on previous period or just raw numbers. Let's just look at the raw totals. And then your time, this time series, it's suggesting 2002 to 2012. I'm going to guess because that's what we have Austrian data on. But if we go back to 1990, we've got it all the way through there. So it looks at the data as it's presented and it guesses that sort of a line graph is going to be our best way to visualize this. You can force it to take the form of other graphs, but it sort of makes an educated guess about how you're going to most want to see the data. You can also select this, which will just give you a raw table of the data over time. So this is great if we're just concerned with Austria, which is because of the way we entered the data, we were looking at Austrian tourism data. But if you go back to this first assumption, you're able to add in other, let's compare Austria to Belgium, put Bulgaria, put Greece, right? So you can then change and produce the actual more complex graphs as you go through. So it's going to give you, all the sort of additional data on coding, where the data is coming from down here, a link to the original data set on the Eurostat website. So, okay, this is great. What do we do with this now? So what you can do is you can actually, now that you've logged in, you can save this data set or the specific visualization. You've got the option of, exporting the visualization as either a PDF or an embeddable link somewhere, downloading the data that you're specifically using in the visualization, or adding it to your gadget bin. And your gadget bin is basically a collection of small components of a visualization, so individual figures. And then what you do with all of those is, let me show you a finished product here. If we go to my account, if you want to build something more than just sort of the individual figure in NOMA, you build it into a larger infographic. So here's something that somebody produced on using UN sort of e-government data, the levels of e-government. And as you go through, you can see sort of they've pieced all these individual components into a larger infographic that sort of tells the story of this data throughout the entire data set. And you'll also notice that for a lot of these, you've got sort of a similar time series component, like with Gapminder, so you can begin playing these and look at how they evolve over time to get that sort of component of the variable. These are going to show you rankings over time. So, and then, obviously here, these are just sort of smaller visualizations, picking out specific sort of variables and relation. Here's a bubble graph that's very similar to sort of what you're making with Gapminder, but on specific things. So this gives you an idea of sort of what a finished product can look like if you want to, spend the time to do this. If you've got a, topic that you teach every semester, it might be worth the time to sort of put in the data here, the time to develop something, and then use it as sort of a supplemental handout that you're giving your students links to. You can PDF this. Obviously, if you do that, you're losing sort of the time series components of this. But the way you make these is you have this option to create a dashboard. And this is going to give you a 4x4 square, but in each of these, they'll get bigger and bigger because you're able to split each of these sections an infinite amount of times. It basically stays this width, but you can make it as long as you want. So in each of these, you can choose to insert a chart, which takes you to the same sort of tool we were working with previously. You can have sort of a text block, just a raw table, maps. You can actually, because these live on the web, you can create sort of a real-time updating feed if there's an RSS link that deals with the topic, or you can have a Twitter feed that searches on a particular hashtag, and so it gives you or the students real-time updates whenever you're looking at it. So it's another way that, if you're putting in the sort of effort to make it up front, you can have things that do the work for you next semester when you're coming around. You've got whatever the most updated sort of news on this topic is. You've got all different bubble graphs, these sort of tree maps that evolve in size and relevance over time, rankings. This is just an info card if you just want to have real quick bullet points of sort of facts and figures. So that's the basic way that you're making it. The other thing is that it has an option to make a presentation out of it. So let's say, yeah.
Once I make this, how do I share it?
So
online, right?
It's online, so you'll get
time series part of it. So
yeah, so you'll get a specific shareable link. Okay. That you can create a link to and either have it on, send whoever's in the link or put it up on your Blackboard page. That's the way I would suggest doing it if you want it to have the updating time series interactive components of it. Okay. Yeah. You can also upload your own data into this. So another alternative is if you just want to use this as your standing sort of, I'm going to go and make conference presentations and I want to have a supplementary component to it that lives on the web, you can make a NOMA sort of dashboard that deals with has all of your information on it. And then you can use this make presentation option, which is basically going to treat each of these different sections of the dashboard as individual PowerPoint slides. And so it's going to take you through narratively. Yeah, so it's a nice way, sort of you're at a conference and you show it on this, and then you have the ability for people to go and look at it offline. It's a sort of way of branding your research and having it be available. Because this has a login here, this allows you to still have private data, even if it's hosted on NOMA, so you can control who has access to being able to make visualizations with this data.
So the presentation will be sort of live.
Yeah. So the presentation is going to be live. It's basically going to zoom in component by component, and then when you zoom in on it, you can start the time series, so you can interact with it any way that you would be in the larger sort of, larger data.
But can I post it on my blog or can I?
Yeah, so the only thing I would be concerned about is posting it on a blog. If you post the entire dashboard on a blog, that might just be visually a bit clunky. What I would say is take the individual components and embed them on your blog.
No, but like something like an infographic, which, you wouldn't make it very long because of the size?
Sure. Yeah, it could easily be posted onto. Okay. Yeah, I'm actually, in a minute, we're going to talk about 2 other tools to make infographics that are very blog friendly. So this is nice. It's not the most user friendly just because of the size of it. And sometimes I've had students get overwhelmed with sort of, just the choices. So one thing I've done, as you go through and if you find a data set that you like, you can favorite that data set. And then, I have my students, if they find me on NOMA, you can see sort of data sets that I've favorited here. And so I can say, find me, use the environmental protection expenditure in Europe data set, so constrain their options a little bit rather than have them go and search through the 2,000 environmental data sets. Use this one, just make it more manageable for them. And that's NOMA. That's pretty much, it's a pretty powerful tool. It takes a little getting used to. And this is also being constantly updated. There's always new data showing up on this from a large variety of sources. All right, the last data piece. The last data piece to show you guys. Actually, I'm not even going to show you, but I just want to mention it. Many Eyes, which is IBM's sort of data platform. It's being folded over into Watson Analytics. If you remember, Watson was the Jeopardy playing computer. So it's part of their sort of collaborative data management thing. The appeal of Many Eyes was that it was a collaborative data space, much more so than NOMA or Gapminder. The idea was you put out a data set that you were working with and you have it visualized and sort of tell the story that you think you're going to tell on it. And then other people can come in and say, yeah, but it tells a different story if you look at it this way, or this is a more effective way to tell your narrative. And so for classes, it was nice because you could put up data and then invite your class to it and have them collaboratively work online. It's easier than sort of having the sample data that's in Stata and then having them all get in, and the startup costs are lower. It's easier for that. So if you're interested in having your class sort of interact with data, this is something I would keep an eye on, what happens with Many Eyes. I don't really want to get in and explain it to you guys too much now, because there's a very real chance that in 2 months, the functionality of it and just the user experience could change dramatically. But if that's something you're interested in, I would keep an eye on sort of what happens with Many Eyes, Watson Analytics in the next 6 months or so. Might be worth something to return to in 2016. Okay, that's the sort of data part of this. Tools for concept visualization. This is Glyph. Let me just close these. Glyphy is a really simple tool that makes something that should be easy but isn't in Microsoft Word really easy, which is creating sort of flowcharts, concept maps. Anything like that. If you've ever tried to do it in Word, it's got these really weird hierarchical decisions that's really constrained in how you can make it. So this is an easy free platform. You can create a free account. Again, this is a paid account, but I'll show you why it's really unnecessary to have anything other than the free account. Let's start from blank, and then I'll show you some finished pieces that I've made. Basically, it gives you a very MS Paint style, workplace, and you can grab these shapes, pull them over. It gives you guidelines to line them up. Then you can connect the shapes on any of these sort of connection points. Draw a line. And now that you've done that, these two shapes are locked together. So they're going to keep this sort of relationship that they have. That's the basic functionality. But you can imagine once you've got sort of 20 or 30 different components here, it becomes very easy that they keep their sort of relationship to each other. You can group things together. You can, it comes loaded with a bunch of really nice sort of, different color components, so it makes it really easy to look like you've spent a lot of time, picking out the right type of sort of, making it look pretty. You can put, text in any of these, relocate them, change how the lines sort of intersect. So you got basic shapes that you can play with. You've got flowchart shapes. Swim lanes, if you're interested in sort of creating tables like this. This is where you start to get into what is only available to pro users. Glyphy is really aimed towards sort of engineering diagrams, electrical diagrams, programming network diagrams, things like that. So if that's the type of thing you're interested in, then maybe you get into the pro. But for general sort of flowcharts and diagrams, it becomes not necessarily that important. Glyphy also allows you to have a series of images and use your own images as components. It gives you a certain amount of space in the free version. So you can upload your own images, or you can use this to search on Bing for images, and then you can just directly pull them in. Sometimes they take a second. Sometimes they're massive. But then basically the image is now going to function like any other object. If I could find it because it's so big. But it's going to function like any other object that you incorporate. Let me show you some completed one just to give you an idea. Here's something, from my dissertation. That you can see. So you can also take these, lock them together as a group, and have them move in tandem. It's really versatile, sort of, for whatever you need. I should say that once you've created what you like, you can export it, PNG, JPEG, in a variety of sizes. I've never had any issue with quality here. These are all pretty good sizes. The Glyphy file is just if you want to export an editable file. Everything else is obviously flat, locked in place, but you can export a Glyphy, re-upload it, and edit it. So the reason that it is nice to export things as soon as you're finished with them is that the free account allows you to have 5 Glyphys max. But as soon as you save one offline and download it, you're back to having 4 Glyphys. So as long as you're downloading things that are finished, you can get by with the free version. In fact, you can download a Glyphy file to get below your threshold of 5, and then if you decide you want to edit something, re-upload the Glyphy file, change it, and then download it offline again. It is a really useful tool. So obviously, you can use it for your own research. The other thing I use it for sometimes is there are just some things that when I teach multiple streams framework in my policy class, the diagrams in textbooks and the diagrams that other people have are horrible. I think they make the concept so much more complex than it needs to be. So I spent 10 minutes and I made a diagram that if I was the guy that wrote it, this is how I would show it. I use it in my PowerPoints in class. It's just an easy way to sort of, show these relationships really quickly, put up on the board and, up as part of your PowerPoint, put in your research, whatever you want. I love it. Like I said, the pro version is based around sort of engineering, computer programming, but also it's used for interior design to make floor plans. So you also get, all these furniture models if you go to the pro plan. Simple, it's direct. I like it. The other concept one on here, just in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over because it's sort of really specific. But Dippity is an interactive timeline program that allows you to look at basically create a timeline and then create each event, have a link to another source, or have an external link. So if timelines, building sort of, you might want to have your students build a timeline of an event, how a global issue emerges or something like that. That's another useful tool. But I just want to get to this last part, which is looking at infographics, which is basically packaging, the two parts of this together. So I think these are useful for one side, branding your own research and putting it out there. The other side of this is it's an alternative to having students. You can use them as an alternative to sort of traditional poster presentations for students. Have them make an infographic that can actually is a review of an article, is their own sort of research findings. Move your poster session online. Package it this way. You can also use it. I've had some people say that when they were studying for comps, instead of writing out their note cards, they made an infographic about each article or each citation that they wanted to have. So the two tools here are Infogram and Pictochart. Functionally, they're very similar. The main difference here is that Infogram is much more constrained in the options that you have. You sort of don't have a control over what the font is, how the look of some of these things. Pictochart's very customizable. So you sort of want to choose what you're using it for. I usually advise, if you're having your students do an assignment on infographics, use Infogram. It lets them concentrate more on the actual content of it, so they're not spending a half an hour picking out what font to use. They all look pretty and they look great. It's just more constrained. The way Infogram looks. So if we create a new one, you've got maybe 6 or 9 templates that you can choose from. And the way it works is each component runs the entire width of it and they stack vertically. So it can be as long as you want or as short as you want, but it's always this fixed width. So you've got a text component here. Double click on it to add the title. Literally there is no choice in what the font is. If you upgrade to the paid version, you've got a choice. But titles all take the same format. Subtitles all take the same format. All of your options, if you want to add text, you've got titles, you've got subtitles, which have their own design. You've got an option to put in sort of pull quotes. If you want to take a section of something, this is your option for just paragraph text. I should say these live online as well, so you can have sort of things that update depending on when a person looks at them. So you can have a timer that's counting down to a specific time or counting up from a specific time that runs in real time. You've got sort of bullet points for facts and figures. Any of these that you want to incorporate, you just choose Insert, and then it gives you a new block at the bottom. You can drag this block anywhere you want. When it goes to edit text, you've got your choice of what is this bullet point going to look like. Just a pure rectangle. You put in your number, and then you put in your descriptive text for it. You can add as many of these as you like, basically. But again, it's very constrained as far as your options on what it actually looks like. Okay, text is pretty simple and straightforward to put in. When you've got figures, they just auto-generate with some sort of sample data for us. But you click on it and it opens up an Excel file that you can basically copy and paste data directly into. Or you've got this option to link to data that lives in your Google Drive somewhere. So if you've got an Excel sheet, I think I've got, this is just some raw data. Select that, you link it to it, and it automatically sort of brings in your data. Now this is pulling from your Google Doc. So anytime you update that doc, this is also going to update the visualization of it. So then this gives you also some examples. If you, hold on, just you can edit this in some ways. You can choose how it looks. Is there the grid in the background? Smooth the curves, you can reverse the axis. So sort of some things. Settings gives you some option on colors and the actual height of it, how big you want the graph to be. But again, it's pretty constrained options. So if you want to put in other graphs, you've got options for pretty much any type of chart that you can think of that are all designed to look pretty. You can even do word clouds. You can just do sort of raw tables that it's going to show you. You've got a decent amount of graphs that you can insert, and it works all the same way. You're either copying and pasting the data into an Excel style sheet here or linking it to a Google Doc. Maps, it looks like you have a lot of options, but in reality you have 2 because everything else is the paid version. You can have this world map or a US map that is divided by states. When you insert the world map, you control the colors the same sort of way. The colors are being drawn from this value here. So you just create all the 1s are going to have the same color, all the 2s are going to, it's going to go in intensity. So there's some limitations on the maps, but I'll also argue you've got an option to upload an image, whatever image you want. So rather than buying the paid version to get maps on here, just upload an image of the map that you like. Easy way to get around it. This has an image library of up to 10 images, but it works the same way as Glyphy. As soon as you delete an image off of there, you're back down below your threshold. So as long as you don't have more than 10 images in an individual infographic, you're fine on the free version.
Can I upload a time series thing from
Noma? It wouldn't be directly from Noma. You would have to download it from Noma and then upload it. Yeah.
It's possible.
Yes, I haven't explicitly done it, but I don't see why you couldn't. Yeah. You've also got an option to add media, embed YouTube videos or Vimeo, coming from, or just general URLs that allow you to go from offline. And basically, you just keep adding these components until it's as long as you want. You can drag these components and reorder them in any way that you want. This is, if you've got Google Analytics running on anything, you can just incorporate this to have real-time sort of analytic updates. So once you're finished with this and you've created the actual infographic, the only issue is that with the free version, it lives online. You can't download it with the free version. If you want to upgrade, you can download it. But if you're assigning this to your students, basically the way they will be handing in their assignment will be sending you a link. So there are some privacy concerns because technically it is publicly searchable and available. But you decide how much that bothers you, because when you go to publish, you enter a title and you enter tags separated by comma. So the tags are what it's going to be searchable on. So if you leave this blank and give it sort of an obscure title, which might be SIS 220 or whatever your class name is, it becomes functionally less searchable, although it is conceptually public available, right? So the privacy concerns are something maybe you want to decide on. But that's the quick and dirty of sort of how Infogram works. Let me just show you Pictochart really quickly. Functionally, it's very similar, but again, sort of less constrained for you. So what Pictochart gets you is, one, they update their free templates a lot more that are sort of topically related to things that are going on. If you want to use these, but your general blank templates also are really customizable. The other thing is that in addition to infographics, it allows you to create reports, which are basically, if you think of like quarterly reports coming out from industries and businesses, really visual but in booklet form. You can also do sort of one-sheet posters that are made to fit on 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17. And you can take the entire thing and make it a presentation in the same way that, again, it's going to take you through component by component. So if you're doing sort of research that you want to have really branded around yourself, you can create, from once you've created one of these, it's easy to sort of repurpose it into these other 4 components. And so if you're taking something around, if you're in the job market, if you're taking something, you know, as a grant proposal and you've got to do a couple different things with it, it's nice to have a really sort of easy way to have a diverse branded sort of look for your research. I should say the other thing, if you use SurveyMonkey at all, I don't know if you do like public opinion data or if you're collecting your own samples, this integrates with SurveyMonkey, so you can have sort of real-time results coming up that load directly in from SurveyMonkey as the respondents come in. Just to show you what the actual creation looks like, it's the same thing. You've got these visually hierarchically stacked blocks. You can click in it, and then within it, you can add text. You can add basic shapes, lines, photos, icons. The difference here is that within each of these blocks, it's a customizable space. So all of these can be changed, fonts, text size, whatever else. So this becomes much more customizable. You also have backgrounds, you know, some really obnoxious backgrounds that you can load in as much as you want. Let's get out of there before that gives us a headache. Under tools, you've got very similar options to incorporate, a little different stylistically, but basically the same type of options within the different types of graphs. And again, this can be linked to Google Sheets. Same sort of functionality there. When you go to download, this is going to let you download things. The only thing that the free version is going to get you is to save as a PDF. So you're going to be able to download as a PNG or a JPEG file. So some size and quality concerns depending on how big you want this. And it's going to be watermarked with their brand, you know, so not necessarily a huge concern, I don't think. So at least this is going to get you a completely offline version if you want to have your students do it. You can also, it's going to allow you to publish it to the web, get a shareable link on it. So that's basically Pictochart. 2 things doing the same sort of functionality. One's a little more customizable than the other. And on the maps on this one, oh, in this one you actually get continent maps. If you want to. So, all right. Those are basically all the tools I wanted to run through today. Let me just show you some other things. These are a series of blogs that I think are really good resources if you're looking to discover new tools like this, if you're looking for new options. This Improving Visualization blog is out of the UK. It's really, really wonderful. It's got a lot of really good examples of all different types of visualizations for you to think about, for you to play with. It's got a lot of good guides to tools that are out there, thinking more abstractly about what it means to visualize data and how to do it correctly. This is something I've shared with my students before. It's basically a periodic table of all the different types of visualizations that there can be. And when you hover over something, it gives you an example of it. So if you're it's nice in a basic methods class, right? If you're saying, here's the data I have. Now, what form should it take if I want to tell a story with it? So this is a nice sort of interactive, it's a nice visualization about visualizations. This is another site out of the UK that specializes in interactive maps and sort of doing that, you know, layering maps over maps and data over maps. Useful to play around with. And then, you know, this is the last thing that I show my students, and I'll show to you guys too. Data is only as good as we use it, so it all falls on sort of the, the person designing the visualization. So I hope this was useful. Keep the link to that Google Doc because I update that. So you might want to check back in a month or two and see what's new on there. And please, if you guys use any of these, let me know. Just for our purposes at CTRL, we like to know who's actually using these things in the classroom. Just let us know how it goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I show you the tiny URL link?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, tinyurl.com/BISSFI.